So I got into an argument with a MAGA on Twitter a while back that has really stuck with me. I was advocating for some issues that I cared about, and they said something like, "You're just an activist." And I, in kind of my hot-headed moment, shot back, "No, I'm not an activist. I actually support what I advocate for. I go to protests, I call my representatives, and I put in the work." And of course, he replied, "That's what being an activist is." And the thing about that conversation that struck me is not so much about him, but my own internal viewpoint. Because the reality is, he was correct. For the causes that I care about, I am an activist. But what I found interesting is that I had this subtle unconscious negative view of activism that I've recognized has been eroded by the alt-right, MAGA, and related movements. With their effective propaganda of smearing the left as woke social justice keyboard warrior activists, I subtly internalized a negative view of activism. So today, I kind of want to dissect activism, the good and the bad of it, and if being an activist is a positive or negative, and when it might kind of cross that line. An activist in its simplest form is simply a person who campaigns to bring about political or social change. And the truth is, I've been an activist for a lot of different issues over the years. I was an activist against human trafficking, for the rights of immigrants, both documented and undocumented, and of course have more recently been an activist in regards to supporting Ukraine against Russia's invasion. And with Trump's second term being the absolute dumpster fire that it is, I'm an activist against many of his policies. I do protest, I do call my Congress people, I do make posts and videos about issues that I care about. I have had the opportunity to meet with representatives and talk about issues that I care about in person. And so the fact of the matter is that while I can't devote every waking moment to championing the causes that I care about, activism has been and remains a huge part of my life. So how on earth did I reach a place where I subconsciously was viewing activism as something to be embarrassed about? Like, there's no one moment that I can really point to because it was very subtle, but I think it has a lot to do with the relentless MAGA propaganda mocking people who are woke social justice warriors and triggered liberal snowflakes. Because as much as I intellectually can push off insults like that, which are specifically designed to demean and mock people who are angry at injustice and want change, I can't ignore that they do trickle down into my subconscious, and they make me doubt and question if activism is good or beneficial or just an ego trip or something that I do for social status. And that's exactly their goal with their propaganda. They continually suggest that activism is performative, paid, or just something that super angry, emotionally underdeveloped people with purple hair and no social life, among other slurs that I'm going to leave out of this video, do for social media clout. And the reality is that in all real long-term activism I've been involved in, while there certainly are people who just kind of jump on the bandwagon sometimes, the core of and the vast majority of people involved are sincere and really care about their cause. There's a difference from attending one rally right after a major event happens when everything is all abuzz, and being a true activist who supports and still shows up months and years down the line, continuing to engage, continuing to stand in what they believe after the headlines are long gone. And I ultimately think that is what I was reacting to when the MAGA guy called me an activist. It was the perception that I was being viewed through the lens of someone just jumping on a bandwagon because it was the latest thing, or my friends were doing it. Actual activism, I think, is so important because it's the consistent, persistent application of pressure against authoritarian and unjust forces in the world that does bring lasting change. We saw it with the civil rights movement. We saw it with the women's rights movements over the years. We see it with the LGBTQ plus community and so many other issues here in the United States. Real activism is hard. Real activism takes work. Real activism rarely sees overnight results. I and so many others have been relentlessly advocating for adequate support for Ukraine over the last 3 years, and it hasn't materialized in the way that we wanted yet. We've had wins. We've forced Congress to push through various aid packages from time to time. We've continued to force politicians to face the reality of the Russian invasion. But it's a long fight. And as we've seen with the Trump administration, there can be huge steps backwards. But real activists don't just give up. I mean, Bernie Sanders has been advocating for universal health care, living wage, and other issues for decades and decades, and there's a good chance that he's never going to see the fruition of his life's work before he passes away. But he has seen progress, and this is true in every issue. There's rarely a movement that gets everything it wants all at once through political action. In some cases, maybe it'll take some months, maybe it'll take a few years, and then there'll be massive reforms. In other cases, it can take decades. When I talk to many people in my friend groups and, advocacy and activism comes up, I hear a common refrain that goes something like, we're just ordinary people and we can't influence anything. And this always rubs me the wrong way because it's not only going against history, but it's also a defeatist mindset. When I see people from around the world suggest that the United States has already fallen and is now the next North Korea or Russia, it pisses me off because it's writing off the fact that there are millions of people who oppose the changes towards the authoritarian, kleptocratic oligarchy that President Trump is trying to produce. And while it's taking a minute to mobilize a country as geographically massive as the United States, mobilization is happening. Protests are happening. People are flooding the voicemails of their senators and congresspeople. There is real world tangible resistance. So ultimately, I want to leave off this video encouraging everyone who might still be watching to get involved in a tangible way for causes that you care about. No one person can truly dive into all issues, but together we can tackle a multitude of issues at depth over time. And that's how real change happens. It's rarely simple or quick, but advocacy and activism are essential to pushing our world in a better direction that benefits more people. So before signing off of this video, I do want to address what are the negatives of activism. And of course, there's always the possibility that people are advocating for negative things that they don't understand, particularly if they are jumping on bandwagons. But that's honestly not a very big concern of mine. The bigger concern would be things like mental health, burnout, and frustration that can come with activism, particularly over the long term when you're not seeing the fast results. And that can be tough. But it's important to maintain your mental health as you are being an activist. And then, honestly, I don't think that there are a ton of negatives to it if you are making sure that you take care of yourself and you are championing issues that actually are benefiting people, actually will change lives for the better. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I will catch you in the next one.